I was in Los Angeles working on a project on election night, and there was this feeling as watching the New York Times election probability meter sort of oscillating and then slowly but steadily just going more and more certainly in the red, But I remember going to sleep, trying to go to sleep that night and eventually just drifting off and waking up a couple hours later and, it was still dark outside, and I was just thinking about it and I was like, this guy ran a campaign on the idea that people like me and my parents shouldn't be here, and the state where I grew up voted for him. For me, I think the most unambiguous way to represent is to actually just be myself as fully as possible. I was in 9th grade on 9/11, when the towers fell, and it was on all the TV screens in our class, and we were all sitting there trying to make sense of what was happening. Most people, that I was surrounded by, didn't know that they knew a Muslim. And so the only place that people were finding out about what people like my parents might be like, or any association with that whatsoever, was by watching the news and hearing mostly really negative things. It was in that kind of circumstance that I started to think about the idea of music as representation.
Here you are back in North Carolina.
Here we are.
How does that feel?
I guess.
Do you feel a sense of home coming about?
It feels amazing. I mean, it's been unraveling in stages, I feel like stepping off the plane and smelling the air, you get this sort of, you think you remember what it's like to be home, but you don't really remember until you smell the smell. And also the almost immediately following smell of the Cajun filet biscuit from Bojangles that I bit into.
How do you, because you have this interesting way of also infusing sort of non-Western codes into some of your music. Mm-hmm. How do you balance the sort of almost teleological aspects of that design with sort of more neutral aspects of the non-Western codes?
I think for me it kind of feels like a question of how did you grow up in North Carolina?
That's kind of what I'm asking.
Being a brown kid who is the son of Muslim immigrants. You know what I mean? It's this
who you are is what you see.
Yeah. And for me, music has been almost like a form of therapy, because it's, I probably tried every possible trend and way to fit into anything that people did when I was a kid. I would dress all different ways. I would, and some of them were very comical, but it was just it was me just trying to find a way to piece together something that felt like my own personhood, and where I could create a world in which I would belong. Okay, it's like designing a house or something, and you're I'm going to build this house, and then inside of the house, I'm going to design these rooms, and then maybe in the room, there's going to be this table, and at the table are going to be these chairs. So it kind of works in this top-down sort of way. And a lot of what I'm doing is starting with the chair and building the table and then the room and then the house, And it does a thing where you can allow really specific, tiny parts of the sound of what you're working with to like dramatically influence how the whole composition unfolds. Whereas if you started from the big picture, a lot of those details wouldn't necessarily have that kind of like big structural impact on the song. I would say that surprise is like a big part of the process. It can kind of depend on where an idea starts. So sometimes an idea starts with like something like this. Like I just have this one sound, I'm like, there's this attribute of it that is inspiring me or speaking to me, or I can imagine how I could take that thing and make it into something that would be cool, you know? So then I'll spend some time with it and I'll just work with the sound in this really hands-on sort of way. It's like clay or something, you know, and you just like shape it into something that you can use. You have to kind of, at least for me, I found myself picking and choosing a lot about like being like, okay, well, there's something about this that connects with me, and I'm searching for that connection because I don't feel like I necessarily fit anywhere. And so I'm gonna like reach out and like hold on to that because it brings me closer to feeling at home in some kind of way. I'm gonna bring that strain with me, you know? And so a lot of music and artistic practice for me has had to do with just trying to harness all of those different connections to all these different sides of who I am and to build who I am through all of that. There's something when, you know, you connect an abstract concept like worshiping, you know, from the context of a different faith with like, oh, that's that person I know who I've laughed with and broken bread with and like gone through tough things with, you know, and I realized that that clearly not only wasn't happening enough, but that like any music that I needed to make needed to, on some level, represent a counterexample to that and say like, okay, if we're here, if we're a problem, if we're breaking English, then like this is how we're doing it.